And just as an introduction, we are holding this meeting on a hybrid format where we have both people in attendance as well as people that can dial in. If you do want to dial in, then you can join the meeting from your computer, tablet, or smartphone on https://global.go-to-meeting.com/join/403-744-325. And you can also dial in on your phone at 872-240-3311. The access code is 403-744-325. And going forward, for the foreseeable future, we'll continue to hold meetings in a hybrid manner. There is some, I think, some favoritism shown by some of the attendees for being able to dial in, and to the extent that we can continue to do that, we will. If we do decide to go strictly in a in-person meeting, then that'll be announced in the meeting notice when it's publicized. For tonight, with the reemergence of this new variant of COVID, we do encourage people to wear masks. They're not required, but anybody that's in attendance we would prefer them with masks, but again, it's not mandatory. All right, with that, first item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for Brian Higgins at 49 Snowing Road, map 15, parcel N2, to replace and remove an existing float in a new configuration. We've been advised that the applicant has requested to withdraw his determination of applicability without prejudice. So if I can have a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is a request for a change in plan for 50 Martha's Lane, map 43, parcel B6-9 for John F. and Joseph A. Barbati. The request to change 224 square feet of a previously approved deck to a covered porch. The other 140 square feet of the deck will remain open. So, Amy?
Oh, do you want, that we do have a representative here if you want us.
Oh, fine, Lynn.
Hi,
Yeah.
good evening. I had to come to
Okay.
remind myself that I still know how to do this and to get dressed. This application is just simply for a revised plan. You approved this project not too long ago, so it should be fresh in your memories. Actually, I have not recorded the order of conditions yet, in case you were so inclined to add an additional condition for the covered porch, that perhaps it shouldn't be turned into interior space without conservation approval. And I also gave Amy, that you don't have because I couldn't get him in time, 2 copies of a revised plan with that note that it shall not be turned into interior space, and it's dated subsequent to the date of the revised plan that you have. And I gave you a picture. Patriot Builders is actually my client, and I gave you a picture of what it will look like. And it has the knee wall because it's elevated like this picture, and it's a safety factor. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I won't take up your time.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
At its closest, the deck is 80 feet from the resource area, so it is not in the 0 to 50 or within 60 feet for a new structure zone. There's no change in footprint to what was approved. And I think in order, they would have to, if they wanted to convert anything, they would have to come in front of us anyways. But it is a bit farther back than some of the other ones that we've seen. So either way, either with the language or without, I mean, since the applicant is willing to put that language on there, I say let's accept it. And I would recommend approval of the change in plan.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioners? Starting with Mark.
I have no remarks, I just agree with Amy.
Thank you, John.
Nothing.
Just a point of clarification, I'd like to ask Amy a question. I'm assuming since this is a revision of a previous approval, that I should abstain from voting on this.
I would say yes, because it was one that you weren't present for
Yeah, I
at the
wasn't
first
present.
go-around, and, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So can we have a motion, please?
Move that we accept the request for change in plans for 50 Martha's Lane.
I'll second it.
And should we condition on that, that it will not become habitable space?
I think, I mean, the wording is that it shall not become habitable space without permission of the Conservation Commission.
Should that be in the motion?
It's on the plan, which will be the plan of record. I don't think it needs to be.
Okay, good. And a second?
Got it tomorrow.
I second it.
Oh, thanks, Van. All in favor?
Aye.
And I abstain.
5 in favor, 1 abstention. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for William and Caroline Councilman for 5 Fiddler's Landing, map 6, parcel A1-8, to demo and replace a single-family dwelling and make site improvements.
Good
Johnny,
evening, this is Taria
sorry.
McGrail with Coastal Engineering. Sorry, I have a terrible echo. Hang on, I'm just going to see if I have this open in 2 places.
If you're on the line, and would you please mute your phones if you haven't done so?
Do I still have an echo?
We don't hear an echo on our end.
Okay. Okay, great. I think it's gone. Wonderful. Again, this is Taria McGrail with Coastal Engineering, here to represent the applicant and owners of 5 Fiddler Landing Road. The subject property is currently developed with an existing 2-story dwelling that was constructed in 1968. In addition to the dwelling, the property is also improved with a paved driveway, covered entry, slate patio, decks, brick and timber steps, a rinse area, lawn, and plant beds. The property is also improved with a revetment. You may recall that this revetment was approved by your commission in 2018. The permit number is SC 32-2375, and that permit is still open. The revetment went in, I believe it went in this past year. Also on the property, there's a pier, ramp, and a float system. The resource areas on this property include coastal beach, bank, salt marsh, and also land subject to coastal storm flowage. Coastal storm flowage on this site is a VE elevation 13 and also an AE elevation 11. The work on the upland portion of the property around the house is all within the AE elevation 11 flood zone. The applicant is proposing to remove the existing dwelling and replace it with a new flood compliant structure. The proposed dwelling will have a first floor that sits above the AE flood zone that I just mentioned. In addition to the proposed dwelling, a patio is proposed on the west side of the dwelling. As part of the proposed project, the applicant is also proposing to install a new sewage disposal system that will include IA treatment. In comparison with the existing system on site, this new system with an IA treatment is going to provide a great environmental benefit by providing reduced total nitrogen in the effluent coming out of the system. Runoff from the building roof and patio will all be managed on site with dry wells, so there will not be any runoff contributed towards the coastal bank or any of the other resource areas. Overall, the project is going to result in 156 square foot reduction in developed coverage in the 0 to 50 foot buffer zone. In order to mitigate for an increase in hardscape coverage proposed in the 50 to 100 foot buffer zone, to the top of the coastal bank, we are proposing approximately 2,000 square feet of mitigation. This mitigation is proposed at a rate that is at 2 to 1. Since a portion of the property proposed work is located within the 0 to 50 foot buffer to the top of the coastal bank, the applicant is requesting a variance from Harwich Wetland Regulation 1.04 to provide relief to allow work within the 0 to 50 foot buffer. As previously mentioned, this proposal will result in a reduction in coverage in the 0 to 50 foot buffer and will be mitigating for new coverage in the 50 to 100 foot buffer at a 2 to 1 ratio. And Jen Crawford from Crawford Land Management is also available tonight to provide you with a discussion of the proposed mitigation. Jen?
Good evening. For the record, Jen Crawford from Crawford Land Management. So picking up where Taria left off, we submitted a mitigation plan to you that shows the roughly 2,000 square feet of mitigation in a few different places. So starting with the most, we'll call it the most seaward side, we are proposing to restore around 700 square feet of salt marsh between the neighboring bulkhead and where the salt marsh on the existing property starts. So that's one piece of our mitigation. Moving more landward, we are proposing to vegetate the coastal bank resource area with woody shrubs. I do know that there was a question from Amy about both of those pieces of proposed mitigation, so I'm happy to address those either at the end of my presentation or during the questions, whatever you prefer. And then we are also proposing the rest of that 2,000 square feet of mitigation in the 0 to 50 foot buffer zone directly adjacent to the top of coastal bank. With the exception of the one side, we do understand and show on the plan that there was an area at the top of the revetment that was proposed for mitigation planting with the previous order of conditions. So we've shown that area on our plan so that we're not double dipping, so to speak. That area is hatched out on our plan so that it's accommodated for. With the salt marsh restoration piece, we have taken a look at the existing conditions out there where salt marsh is actually growing. And what we're proposing in our detail, hold on one second. Sorry about that. I have many small children at home yelling. So with our salt marsh restoration deal, we are accommodating for being able to raise that substrate elevation to very closely match the existing salt marsh that's there. So with that, I will conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to address Amy's comments about the salt marsh piece and the coastal bank piece now, or if you would like me to wait, I can wait as well. You just let me know.
I'd say, why don't we just address it now while we're talking about the plantings?
Yeah, please.
Okay, perfect. So one of the questions that Amy had was based on some of our experience, whether or not we thought that we could actually get salt marsh to grow adjacent to the bulkhead, knowing that there is always some wave energy on the ends of bulkheads. And I do, in this case, I do think that we can successfully get salt marsh to grow there. There was salt marsh there a number of years ago. I'm not exactly sure for the reason of the decline of it, but I think that with monitoring in place and utilizing, fiber roll or some sort of reinforcement on that leading edge, I do think that will help protect the establishing salt marsh. And we also have the neighboring property with the bulkhead on the opposite side. On the opposite side of the bulkhead, they do have salt marsh that is there and has seemed to be there for many, many, many decades. And so I do think that it is feasible. What I would like to propose to the commission, if you're amenable, is that we would want to be monitoring the salt marsh anyway, and know that that would be a part of your requirement, which is why we already included annual monitoring reports on our plan to you. But what I think we would be comfortable proposing is that through that 3-year monitoring, if the salt marsh was either not establishing vigorously as we would want it to, or there were parts of it that were well established after that 3 years and parts of it that that maybe weren't taking as well, what we would like the ability to do would be to come back to you with a plan revision that would show that, we'll call it missing square footage of mitigation in the upland, but we would really like the opportunity to try to get that 700 square feet of salt marsh established, because based on the surrounding conditions, I do think that it's possible, or at least there's a very good chance that I believe that we can do it, and I think we can do it within that 3-year time period. And Amy had also asked if we had any projects that we had done where we had established salt marsh adjacent to a bulkhead, and I can say actually we do. There was a salt marsh that we established in Bass River on a project back, I think, in 2015. I haven't seen the project this year, but I did see it last year, and it was in a very similar condition where you had a return a bulkhead on that adjacent property, right on the property line. And as of last year, the salt marsh in that adjacent area was still doing really well. It was a different installation methodology, but it was doing well. So I think that covers the questions on the salt marsh and what we might propose to gain a greater comfort level from the commission for that piece. Amy had also posed a question about the coastal bank area, and her comment was that the coastal bank was already proposed as mitigation. And if I misunderstood, I was looking at the plan, so you can maybe clarify for me, but based on the coastal engineering plan for the revetment, the coastal bank piece looked as though it was just to be seeded with grasses and wildflowers. I did, after submitting this in Amy's comment, I did read through and see that the special conditions also specified that there were to be 10 sweet fern planted on the coastal bank. And so you don't have this plan in front of you, but as a way to be able to discuss that question from Amy, what I did do on a revised plan, and I'm happy to submit it if the commission is amenable. I did show 10 sweet fern on the coastal bank, and I subtracted out that area from our plan, and then kept all the other plantings on the coastal bank. And the area of 10 sweet fern that I saw in the special condition equated to just over 80 square feet. So if that all makes sense, I know it's really hard via Zoom in the platform sometimes to explain those things, but if that makes sense, the coastal bank would still then be vegetated with many, many more additional shrubs, which we would like for you to consider as mitigation, unless I've read the plans or interpreted that special condition wrong. So please tell me if I have, because I know that my comments back to Amy came at about 5:30 this afternoon. So she probably hasn't even seen that email yet. So I haven't had a chance to speak with her about that. But if that makes sense, let me know.
Thank you very much. Amy, you have comments?
Sure, I'll just go through it, my comments first. So the applicant is proposing to remove the existing house, which was built in the 1950s or 60s, and build a new home with attached garage, driveway, patio, terrace, stoop and stairs, and a new IA septic system, landscaped areas and mitigation plantings. They have requested a variance from our no new structures within the 50-foot no disturb zone, because they already have their existing house or patios are in the 50. They are looking to do a reduction in the 0 to 50, but an increase in square footage of hardscape in the 50 to 100 foot buffer. I'd like to see them try the salt marsh restoration there after talking, after looking at it more carefully. We saw Mr. Councilman on the site today, and he described a little bit more. My one suggestion, and the councilman seemed amenable to it, was that between the councilman's property line and the bulkhead, there's a little pie piece of area that wouldn't be vegetated. And I would even though it's not a high wave action, like from actual waves, it's more boat wake action, that little gap could be hard to establish. And Mr. Councilman said that they, with permission from the neighbor, they'd be happy to bridge that gap, if you will, and fill that in with salt marsh as well. And that would kind of, be in our approval. They wouldn't, if we were to approve the project, it wouldn't, the next door neighbor wouldn't have to do a large filing for such a teeny tiny piece. Hold on one second. The new dwelling would be up to flood standards. It's an IA septic system that would be going in. The existing number of bedrooms is 5 and proposed is 5. As you get closer, and again, the expansion is really in the 50 to 100 foot buffer. I guess in terms of the mitigation, it looks very good and it's all applicable to the site. My one hesitation is on what was approved previously and what is being asked for now. Though what was approved previously was really kind of just restoration of that slope with grasses and wildflowers and some sweet fern, it's really that total area was already considered as some mitigation for some other project. So even though you're saying it's 80 square feet you're putting back as the sweet fern, I don't know how it equates to, that the mitigation for this should really stand on its own. If they want to change the plantings that they had been approved to do on the coastal bank as part of the other project, I think that's great to match this. But in terms of square footage and numbers, I think that square footage should have stood on its own, and this, whatever you had to do, should have been in addition to that. Just to be consistent. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do the plantings that you propose on the bank. You just may need to add a little bit more, because I do think that the two projects should stand on their own. So we haven't seen what that would look like, but I do think if we can come to an agreement on what that would look like, that the marsh restoration is a very valuable piece, that the bank revegetation is going to be valuable. I think it outweighs the fact that you're seeing an increase in the 50 to 100. It's going to have an IA septic system treatment. We'll put the condition on there, as we usually do, about the no chemical treatment on the property. I think overall, this could be a benefit to the resource area. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Comments from the commissioners, Mark?
The only thing that jumps out at me immediately would be the permeability factor of the patio, because it's considerably larger than what's there. To me, that would be a positive thing. That's about all.
Thank you. So, we'll keep going with John.
Yeah, so, pretty much agree with what Amy had to say. I have a couple questions, though. One is that on the site today, I saw that there was a strip of unvegetated sand at the beach level, at the foot of the bank or revetment, north of the pier.
Yes.
And I don't see that reflected in this plan, and I'm wondering,
Yep.
it looked like a fairly substantial area.
I
and
think-
I should have brought it up on site. I did
Sure.
not ask about it, but I would think you would want to be planting there as well.
I think that was that was the previous approval. In order to install the rocks, a little bit got disturbed at the edge there. And that would have been under I can check it, but I believe that was accounted for in the previous permit to be, that should have been restored. If not, I think, some sweet gale and the other things that you've talked about, that area absolutely should be revegetated. There's like a little finger right at the toe of the stones, north of the pier, Jen, that, isn't vegetated right now, so.
It looks like it would be salt marsh that would be in there. It was.
Could be marsh upper marsh.
I think the property owner mentioned that
Yeah.
he was, that it was a sort of a wash that comes over the unvegetated part of the beach, sweeps underneath the walkway as from Wake, basically.
Okay.
And then cuts up into that area and it's washed it out essentially.
It sounds like we're talking about an intertidal area right at the bottom there. I'm happy to go and take a look at the site condition that you just mentioned and come back with a response to that, definitely.
Just really quickly, sorry, it's Lee, Councilman. I just wanted to point out that prior to the revetment project, that was also unvegetated.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I would think you would want to include it. But, so my other question, which I raised on site and with Mr. Councilman, among others that were there, about whether the lawn is being treated there anyway. And he he eventually said, put it on Coastal, or I forget who Crawford, said Crawford is taking care of that. So my question stands. I mean, the grass in the area to the south of the pier looked like it was getting beaten by sun, but north it looked very healthy and with few, if any, weeds and rather green. So I just want to make sure that whether or not it's being treated, has been treated, that it's clear that none of the lawn there within the 100-foot buffer should be treated with any kind of fertilizers, any kind of herbicides, any kind of insecticides. It looks to me, however, like you're taking some of that lawn for some of this mitigation, is that correct? So there's gonna be a sliver of the lawn just landward from the currently vegetated area that is going to be taken now, is that correct, for some of the mitigation?
Well, what I see on the plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Taria and Jen, is that between the patio and the mitigation planting, there would be area for a small, a strip of essentially native grass.
Nick in the background is telling me that it already is.
Right, so, and I take your comment, I went back and actually looked at the canopy of the tree that we discussed. And in front of the canopy on the south side, all around it, is the stress grass. And actually, even if you look on the north side where that shade falls off, is again stress grass. So if anyone feels like they need to come by and actually inspect that and look at it, but in the moment, obviously, I wasn't walking all around the property, but the shade of the tree is actually providing essentially the cover needed for grass to perform underneath it, but not north or not south of it.
Okay, thank you.
Stan?
I guess I have a question kind of along the line of what Mark has, because I'm trying to picture, actually comparing this plan to what I was seeing. So most of the garage is moved up, and it's been replaced by patio for the most part, because there's minimal reduction of square footage. So it's really by moving the garage up, and now it's patio. And then, I guess I didn't go up on I thought it was a wood deck, but I guess maybe not. Here on it says, on the old plan was a slate patio?
Yeah, it's a slate
Behind the
patio.
garage, I thought it was wood, but whatever. But behind the garage, I thought it was just like stone. Correct? If I remember it correct. So anyway, so I'm looking at this big patio that we're proposing, so I guess along with Mark's question is, what is this being made of?
If I can hop in, Chair, I can provide some clarification. There is to the north of the existing slate patio, there is an area of pea stone that's surrounded by a timber, and that's also the location of the rinse area the rinse station that's out there today. This area is, I guess it's in the area of what you're saying is behind the garage right now. And the patio that's being proposed is going to include a slot drain so that we can collect all runoff and then infiltrate it to provide groundwater recharge on site, so that we don't have any runoff going off site or even off the patio. It's all going to go right in through the patio, so that it's actually not even able to get out into any of the vegetated surfaces beyond the perimeter of the patio. And so we'll provide groundwater recharge on site via dry well that will be below ground.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you. Brad?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions or comments. First, on the IA septic system, is that being regulated, or is that a decision by the property owner to put in that type of system?
So the property had a new system installed in 2014. The system that went in was subject to a few variances for setbacks. The new system that's proposed is going to include IA treatment to provide reduction of total nitrogen, but it's also because this property is in an environmentally sensitive area that we're going to propose. The applicant is volunteering to propose, but I would say it's probably also necessary by the Board of Health in order to have the variances granted again for the new footprint of the dwelling that's proposed. So the IA is partially required because we're changing the footprint of the house, but we are not increasing the total number of bedrooms or the flow in the house. So actually the IA has a substantial benefit because it has the ability to reduce nitrogen down to about 19 milligrams per liter, which is a substantial reduction from what is the effluent strength when you measure from a traditional Title V system, which is out there today. So it's a huge environmental benefit adding the IA system. The system will require quarterly testing, and then the testing results go to Barnstable County and then also to the local Harwich Health Department. So there will be, so the system's going to go in under a general use approval. But it will require, and it is voluntary, from a DEP position, but it will require reporting on the values of nitrogen to the town.
Thank you. I agree, it's a benefit, and appreciate the summary. In terms of the patio, I don't object to the variance request because we have a reduction in the 0 to 50. I did want to confirm the patio is not coming closer to the resource area. It looks like it's the same footprint, but I want to confirm that northeastern section of the patio seems to be the same footprint. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's within the same footprint of existing development. So that includes the slate patio that's out there today, and then also that area that I described with the pea stone and the timber edge on it.
Yep. All right, thanks. And then lastly, looking over the planting plans, everything looks great. I would like to see you bump up the beach plum. I think it's a native plant that would be on this bank naturally. I think it has blossoms, it's good for pollinators. Structurally, it's good for wildlife habitat. So if you consider bumping up the number, there's only 5 proposed now. And I'm not sure if you'd substitute for something else or if you would just add some additional beach plum.
Sure. Yeah, we have a bunch of bayberry shown on the in the coastal bank area. So if you'd prefer to see more beach plum than bayberry, we'd be happy to swap some of those out. If that makes sense to you.
What do you think, Amy? Would you get a good idea for one, and for 2, would you want to switch out bayberry or some of the grasses?
Well, so I wouldn't want to put them in a location, I think they make sense on the sides of the property. I want to put them in a place where people aren't going to need or be tempted to cut them. So I wouldn't say kind of right out in front, but let me see how many bayberry are you?
We have 11 on the coastal bank, I think. Yes.
You could probably switch out a few of those, Brad, or put a couple other, bayberry up the side property lines a little bit. Or not bayberry, beach plum.
A little larger cluster maybe in the side.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
James, any questions?
Yeah, just one question. While I don't really have any objection to the patio in the 50-foot zone, since there is existing hardscape in that area, is there any opportunity to reduce the size of the patio any amount to increase the reduction in the hardscape in that zone?
We did look at some various options, and what's proposed right now really works well with the programming of the house and the way the owners see themselves wanting to use this space. With the addition of the 2,000 square feet of mitigation, this is really going to be the only outdoor area on the property that will be used by the owners, and it will really focus their activities in that location, which I think is beneficial to the mitigation plants really having the ability to take off.
Mr. Chair, real quick, I forgot to mention, and we had received probably 4 or 5 emails from abutters. I didn't want to have them read individually. They all just voiced their support for the project. So I said I would make that known at the public meeting.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
I have a couple of questions. With respect to the patio, you mentioned it's I assume it's going to be an impervious patio then, that you've included the slot drains on it, right? And where would the slot drains be? Would they also be on the sort of helical area there, the rounded area? Will they cover the?
Yes.
Hello, hello, this is Sean Papich. I'm the landscape architect working with Coastal Engineering as well as with Jen Crawford, also on the project, and with the councilmen. And to speak to the patio itself, the intent was to still do a impervious patio stone, but by incorporating the slot drains, we believe that it certainly takes care of all the water that's going to be running off to where it won't run off in this case, and actually make it better than what it is today. Currently, there is a slate patio there now.
Right.
In this case, we felt like capturing it in a slot drain quite often can be more functional and more successful than some of the permeable joints that you have over a period of time.
All right. In prior presentations that we've had where it's a relatively limited lot, instead of dry wells for the drains, they've used a Coltech system. Do you think that
Yes.
would be preferable here?
I would lean on Tarja for that because I think it's certainly a Coltech system could function here. And so I think quite often we use either a Coltech or a dry well. They're essentially doing the same thing. Tarja, I don't know if you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, they will function the same way. Since this area is patio and it's only going to be subject to foot traffic, it's going to be very clean runoff. And both practices, whether or not we use as the structure providing volume for the water, we use a Coltech or we use some kind of a plastic or concrete structure. In this case, we're proposing a pretty standard concrete structure because they're readily available. They will all function the same way by providing that void space below grade so that it has detention time while it fills and then time to infiltrate out into the sand.
Okay, all right, thank you. With respect to the comments that were made about, with respect to fertilizer, I agree that in the back you can see where the grass is stressed in certain areas. The front of the house, however, there's not a weed in it. It's green as can be. It seems pretty evident that there has been some application done to, at least to the front of the house. I don't know in the back or not. But that will also be included as part of the order of conditions that essentially your entire property, with the exception of one little sliver in the southern corner, southeast corner, is subject to that restriction. So that will apply all over. Another question for you. With respect to the sliver of land that's adjacent to the neighbor's bulkhead, that Mr. Councilman said he will talk to his neighbor, and if agreeable, then he will pay to have that included in the remediation, or in the salt marsh plantings. I would be fine if you want to include that as part of the remediation calculation, if he pays for it and it's.
Oh, yeah, I would agree, it's not much,
So
but
it's
yes.
just something, again, it's not much, but any little bit might help in this particular case. And then that one swale too, was that part of the prior remediation, Amy?
Well, like I said, where it says the 588 square feet on the replanting plan, it wasn't a heavily vegetated coastal bank like they're proposing now, but it was an area that was already, this is like the west corner of the bank. I do have it from the last plan that that area was to be planted in a certain way, and it was mostly grasses and wildflowers and some sweet fern to keep things
This is down
low.
in the salt marsh, below the toe
No,
of the
it's
reservoir.
on the slope.
Oh, I think we were, the area that was washed out was just behind the salt marsh.
Right, that's not the area I was talking about.
Oh, that's what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah, no.
I mean, that wasn't part of the.
That,
trial remediation.
I don't have that file here in front of me, I can't be certain, but again, I would guess I would say we should include it regardless. That denuded area that's at the toe of the wall, just north of the dock. Just because, without replanting that, you're not gonna get the stability for other things, and, I don't know off the top of my head if that was definitely included in the last order or not. I thought there was language in the last order that said if any portion of salt marsh was to be damaged during the installation of the revetment, which I'm hearing that it may have been damaged prior to the revetment. That was the area where that massive beach plum was like overhanging the toe of the slope there, so it could have gotten shaded out in there, we just couldn't tell at the time. But it would be very beneficial to have that revegetated, so it's continuous salt marsh at the base.
Amy, your memory is commendable. So the beach plum, I believe, was the culprit of choking out the high tide bush from continuing into that area. As I mentioned, we do like the high tide bush and understand its purpose. I don't believe that was in as part of the revetment project to correct for pulling more high tide bush. We certainly are replanting beach plums as per the order to replace the big beach plum
Correct.
at the bank. That area below, though, I think was probably got lost in the shuffle because of the large beach plum, as you point out, Amy.
Probably didn't see it. But, Mr. Councilman, would
As
you
recall,
agree that?
in that, just quickly, in that revetment project, while we had the ability to go on the beach, your preference in pre-construction was to keep machinery on the top of the bank, and we were able to do that. So I believe that the damage down below was limited as a result of keeping machinery up high.
Mr. Councilman, would you be willing to have that little finger replanted where vegetation just hasn't taken?
If we can get credit, I mean, will we get credit for that as part of the broader mitigation?
I think that's up to the commission, but I would tend to lean myself towards yes.
If the commission is amenable to that counting towards our mitigation, then again, we understand and appreciate the resource that the marsh grass leads to the high tide bush, which leads to the slope, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so with the comments that we've got, would you prefer that they come back with revised plans?
It sounds like they're tweaking, there's a little tweaking maybe to be done to the mitigation landscape plan, not so much the structural.
I'd like to see location of slot drains, dry wells, and that sort of thing on here as well.
Okay.
And recalculation of the mitigation numbers, including that area that we just talked about.
Okay.
And the little triangle that we have here. I mean, we have time, you're not in a rush to get this started tomorrow or anything, right?
We're not going to start tomorrow, to take your word as you said it, but the challenge is, given the supply chain and getting contractors started these days, you have to start so far in advance in terms of commitment with them. That would be the concern.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much just mechanics at this point of putting the comments that you've received from the commission into the plan so that we'll have a sort of a final version of this going forward.
Also, Ernie, can I ask, if they do plant the area discussed just previously, what would be substituted from the present plan? I don't think we've identified that. Would something be removed?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's there right now is just kind of, it was stabilized after the revetment was done with just a native grass mix there, so, and there are some other low things coming in, but they're not, it's nothing hugely substantive at this point.
But, I have a question, because
Yeah.
we just, the comment was, would they get credit for planting that additional grass? But my understanding was the mitigation that they were providing was already in excess of what was required, so that would even be additional.
But we don't, I guess we have to quantify it a little bit.
No, I understand that.
And I could happily work with Jen Crawford to make sure our numbers, what I know the commission would be looking for in terms of numbers and what the applicant could do would be similar.
So if that's agreeable with you, to just revise the plan and bring it back for the next meeting, and I think it would be pretty quick discussion at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, if that was the, if that was the only thing that if that was the only change that you were wanting, if that's what's holding up the decision tonight, I could also draft some conditions. If the applicant, was wanting to move on a little bit. I've done that on occasion where the commission does not have any qualms about the project in general, but is just waiting for a plan. I've drafted conditions ahead of time instead of after that meeting.
That's
So.
fine. That's fine to do that, Amy.
Okay, and that should expedite things a little bit.
Good. So then can we have a motion?
So that meeting is August 18th.
Well, will we actually have to come back to the meeting at that point? Is that what you're
Yes,
suggesting?
yes, you will.
Oh, okay, all right, fine. So do you need a motion on this?
Motion to
tonight?
continue.
Yes.
I move that we continue the notice of intent for 5 Fiddler's Landing until, what date do we have, Amy?
August 18th.
August 18th.
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
6 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Jen, I can, if you need to talk to me, I'll be in the office the next 2 days. Couple days.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy.
Yep.
Okay. Next item we have on the agenda is notice of intent for 7 Prince Charles Drive, map 110, parcel S27, for Ronald and Jennifer Page. An after-fact permit for a shed and a deck.
Good evening.
For the record, I'm John O'Reilly, representing Ron and Jennifer Posh. We're here tonight to address some issues that arose when the Poshes petitioned the board back in March, I believe, to seek an addition. There was a deck that was within the 50-foot buffer, along with a shed that both were not permitted. Commission asked us to come back with a second notice of intent to address those 2 issues. So that's what the purpose of, that's what we're doing here today. And there is a third component, which I'll get into in a minute. But basically, we're looking to relocate the shed adjacent to the existing garage on the west side of the building. You can see it's just partially within the driveway area, lawn and a little bit of a shrub area. We placed it there so they can at least be able to walk between and get to the backyard, to carrying whatever it may be to get to the pond and to the beach area. We would like to keep the deck. I think it was brought up and discussed at the original meeting that the Poshes have, Mr. Posh has an elderly mother and father who is wheelchair bound, and he uses the deck and the small little ramp to get up and have a place to sit, to enjoy the pond and the waterfront. So we would like to try to keep that deck. So what we're proposing, the deck constitutes 155 square feet. So we're moving the shed outside the beyond the 60-foot setback, well beyond the 50-foot setback. We are mitigating the shed area and a group of invasives around the shed area, about 700 square feet, with native plantings. Now, I've addressed some plantings on the plan, and also what has occurred is the Mr. Posh talked to Organic Landscape, whose name escapes me right now. Lindsay, thank you. And he provided a narration that included several different varieties of native species, which he will be implementing the work for the Poshes. So we'd be doing the restoration around the shed, and then there's some area on the eastern side, adjacent to the edge of the clearing, that we're looking to restore. There's a couple trees down there and some invasives evidently that we can pull out, and Lindsay is looking to restore that area as well. Again, the eastern side is about 225 square feet. And then on either side of the deck, there is a garden that has very few plants in it now, but at one time it was full of native grasses and low-lying shrubs and low-growing shrubs. So we're looking to restore that as well. So the third component that I spoke of earlier is we have to go back to the Board of Health to seek the expansion of habitable space within the within the dwelling. And in talking to the health director, we had come up with a proposal to provide some enhanced phosphorus treatment to the existing wastewater system. So we're proposing a passive upflow phosphorus treatment unit. It's called Phos4Fade. It's a gravity system that will go after the septic tank and prior to the pump chamber. And that will reduce phosphorus, based on the studies, about 95%. Phosphorus, as you probably all know, is very detrimental to inland waters. So I think that's a huge piece of mitigation that the Pashas are offering to hopefully seek the Board of Health approval to allow for the expansion. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission has.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. So, I agree with the moving of the shed outside of the 50-foot buffer. You have both the pond, the edge of the wetland, and then you have a isolated vegetated wetland up the northwest property side. So there's not a lot of space outside of buffer zones, but this area is in the limit of work for the second-story addition that you approved. Second-story addition that you approved a few months ago, and I do see that the benefit of revegetating where the shed was, as well as selectively removing the invasives in that area. It's not all invasives in that area, so it would have to be just selective removal of the invasives and replanting in that area. I do see some value to that. And they have requested a variance from your 0 to 50 to keep the deck. I completely appreciate your reasoning. The deck did appear sometime between 2017 and 2018, which is when we had a 0 to 50 foot, no disturb, no new structures. Per Google Earth, that's when it kind of appeared. Prior to that, it was sparsely vegetated, maybe a couple of stones in there. So while I appreciate their rationale, the commission has generally been very strict on the 50-foot no disturb zone, and likely, I think in my mind, would have denied this in the past. We've denied requests for a shed, small sheds and patios this close to the resource area. I could perhaps be more in favor of keeping that square footage and letting them expand their deck or patio that is closer to that 50-foot mark in lieu of that, to have a little bit more of outdoor space. They do have a decent amount of outdoor space between patios and decks. So perhaps if that square footage, if they could essentially move that, what they're doing down there, a little bit closer to that 50-foot mark, or within, between 50 and 60, I could potentially be on board with that. but in the location that it's at, I don't foresee myself recommending approval for that, should it had come in front of us. Let's see. The walkway that's landward of the wall that's there that connects the existing seasonal dock, the plan that, there's an existing, I think on your site plan, John, where it says seasonal dock, and then there's also like a brick, it looks like brick, but it's a walkway. That really should all be connected, because that is all connected when you're out on the site. I don't have record of the approval of anything of a walkway that's landward of where the dock is actually in the water. So that would be something, that's something else. So, I mean, as presented, as what you presented, I could recommend approval of the shed and that revegetation, but I can't recommend approval of the deck and potentially that hardscape walkway that is landward of the dock.
Thanks, Amy. Start at the other one this time. Jane, do you want to, any comments?
No, I have no comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I have comments. I certainly agree with Amy that the deck is not something this commission likely would have approved. I think it should be removed. It shouldn't be in the 0 to 50. So very concerned that the deck was put in, the shed was put in, the walkway was put in without permitting. That's very distressing to have all that activity without a permit. So I don't support the deck remaining. I don't support the deck being anywhere in the 0 to 50. The patio that's there below the house deck is 20 feet away from the small deck that's there. It's very close. You could put in a walkway. Our regulations allow a 4-foot path that could connect the patio to the retaining wall, and somebody could, go out there and have a stable access to see people at the beach. At the same time, the existing patio is 20 feet away from there. It's very close. Do we know if the retaining wall was permitted?
I can't tell.
Yeah.
I don't have plans that reflect it, and it's such a low profile. Somebody recalled that Mr. Posh may have said there was something there, like a stone, stone prior, that there was something prior, but we don't know when, and I can't tell when.
It looks new to me, so I think that's another structure that was probably rebuilt without a permit. So I think we should discuss fines. I find it really distressing to have that level of activity from 0 to 50 without any permits.
I believe you did levy fines, don't correct me. I'd have to go look,
We
but
have already?
I could easily, quickly go look. I thought we did for 2 of them, but while you're talking, I'll go check that.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, can you clarify on your site plan here that alongside the garden, is that a stone or something?
It is a brick walkway, yeah. It's a brick walkway.
And that was permitted? Because
I don't know what was permitted, sir.
Okay, well, what's right now is that whole walkway now is, if I remember from looking at it, it's like a wooden deck walkway all the way from the edge of the lawn right into the seasonal dock. If I remember right, it was like fairly new
Right.
wood.
And the stringers, it's a Trek deck, or Trek walkway, and the stringers are aluminum, same aluminum that's used in the dock as well, that's going across the sand. So that, it's hard to tell if
Yeah,
it's
'cause
fairly recent.
I'm looking at it right here on maps too. I mean, it's all the way right into the
Yeah, yeah.
deck, so I think something was done there without permit.
John?
That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, well, I pretty much agree with everything that's been said before. I don't support retaining the deck. I'd also like to note that there's a fire pit in the center of the deck now, and it's clearly a social area that's for more than just one or two people sitting there. And I just don't, I would just echo what Brad had to say, which is a lot, extensive unpermitted work well within the 50 is not something that we should agree to at all. And I just also like to point out that the lawn is very clearly still being treated inside the 50. The grass is tall and green and not without any weeds that I could see. I can't imagine that we didn't include a condition in the order earlier this year that they had to not use any fertilizers of any sort, or herbicides, or other pesticides. So that's just another, in my view, that's just another violation here that we need to be concerned about. And it doesn't give me a lot of faith that there's will to comply with orders that we give, and I'm concerned about that. Thank you.
Mark,
No remarks.
what'd you find in?
Fines were not levied. They were directed to file this, and I think it was, talk about it at this time.
All right. Yeah, the only comments I have is, it pretty much echoes what's already been said, that if they came to us today with a request to add this deck, there's no way that we would have approved it. It's a new structure in the 50, and to allow it to remain now would require a hardship variance. I don't think there's any evidence of its hardship here. The fire pit that's on the deck right now, I don't know if that's bottled gas that's fueling that, or if they ran a pipe down there or not. I know they run a pipe to their grill on the top deck that they're going to be covering over. And if that, regardless of how it's been installed, that would have to be removed as well off the deck, or off that area, I think. Those are the only comments that I have, other than sort of, and that walkway too, I don't recall seeing that stand
I don't
from the
recall.
last time we were there.
No, because it looked, it surprised me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was there today, yeah.
yeah, I'd
That
be
looked
very
brand new,
surprised.
like new wood or decking or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, with that, I think we're, at this point, we have the request for the notice of intent, and then I think we can vote on that, and then also enter into a discussion with respect to fines for the work that's been done without permits in this property. So,
Yeah, I don't know if John had anything else he wanted.
All right, John?
I was just gonna ask for continuance. So whatever you'd like to do.
On what basis?
Well, obviously, he's gotta rethink and pull some stuff off there or face a denial. I think I'd rather not have to face a denial. You know, the fines are another thing. You guys can do whatever
Yeah.
you wanna do with those.
I mean, I'd rather not have to issue an enforcement order to remove something if we can do it civilly, you know? So I don't see the harm in a 2-week continuance for that purpose, but I think at that time we would make a decision.
Should we entertain a motion for that, then?
I'll move to continue the hearing on the notice of intent for 7 Prince Charles Drive to August 18th, is that right?
Yes, the 18th, yep.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote, I just want to ask Amy a question to clarify my status. I'm assuming that this is a complete new matter.
Correct.
As opposed to a continuation of your previous approval.
Correct, you can vote on
So
it.
I'm able to vote on it?
Yes.
then. Okay, thank you, Amy.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed.
Would you like some discussion on fines at this point, or wait till next hearing?
I think it's appropriate that we do it now. I can't see that much of change between now and then. Violations have occurred. I think we ought to determine what's appropriate in this situation. Do you have a recommendation, Amy?
I would recommend 300 for the shed, 300 for the deck. Kind of tied along with that, I mean, it is a separate structure. You could consider it part of the deck itself, but is that walkway.
Yeah.
That could be separate, or you could combine that with the deck. And, I mean, technically, if the commission saw fit, I mean, they could always contest this. This is their right to contest it. It would be the wall. And if, whatever else I may have missed when I was not in the room, I don't know if anything else was caught, but.
Yeah.
I would like to move that we issue $300 fines for all 4 structures that were placed without a permit: the shed, the deck, the walkway, and the retaining wall.
Any discussion on that?
We need a second first.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Well, I have one point of discussion, which is the lawn. I mean, it's less clear that we don't have clear objective evidence that someone put fertilizer or herbicides on the lawn. I would say it's like 90% chance. So I'd like a little discussion amongst the commission about how we deal with this, because it's an ongoing problem. We see this everywhere. People seem to think, my take is, people think they can ignore that part of any order of conditions because you almost have to go and catch people red-handed applying these things. My suggestion is that we fine for violation of that as well and put the onus on the owner to come back to us and provide us with very clear evidence that that hasn't happened. Perhaps bring, if it's Lindsay Strode who's been working on that yard and keeping it up, Lindsay can come in and explain to us why the lawn is so green and there are no weeds. I don't know. What does anybody else think?
I mean, there's no shade back there at all, really, to speak of.
It's clearly getting plenty of water, and I don't think we told them they couldn't water the lawn, but there would be weeds there if there weren't herbicides going down. I don't know if there'd be
It's up
weeds
to-
this year, if they stop putting herbicides this year, but it looks really lush and well taken care of.
I share your frustration completely, because you just see it everywhere. But my approach has been to talk to Amy if I see fertilizer pellets or I see a company
Can't see that, yeah.
fertilizing. And so I've dropped a dime, so to speak, several times when I see that. In this case, I'm open to what people think, because I'm very concerned about it, but that's kind of been my metric for going ahead and seeking a fine when I see that evidence. And you see that a lot. You know, the pellets will stay for a little while. But it's,
Well, the grass is plenty long, had been mowed, and so that would hide pellets, I mean,
Well, it would have been some time since they've done it too, I would assume. But if it's being professionally maintained, as we hear it is, then I don't see any reason that we shouldn't be able to get some representation from the landscape company that they are or are not fertilizing. It seems perfectly reasonable.
Yeah,
that
so
the
it's
evidence
whether you
falls.
want to fine, if you want to fine for it and have them, and you potentially rescind it, depending on the outcome of our discussion, or if you want to, at our next meeting on the 18th, have that discussion, have that evidence presented, and then based on that, decide if you want to fine at that time for that activity. I think either way is fine.
Mr. Chair, my only concern in that type of evaluation is, absent the clear evidence that he just had mentioned, I think we are in a very difficult situation of trying to judge whether or not something like that has occurred. If there is clear evidence, like we see pellets or whatever, or somebody actually observes fertilizer being put on the property, I think it's going to be difficult for us to make that decision.
Well, that's why I think if we postpone this discussion until the next meeting and have them bring evidence one way or the other, then determine whether we'd want to impose a fine if they have been fertilizing at that time.
Okay, but again, while we may have evidence from the other side, what evidence do we have to make those accusations?
Well, it'd be their representation.
But no, I mean, we are accusing them of using fertilizer. We need to have some evidence in order to make those accusations. They then can defend against those accusations.
Aren't there like soil samples and stuff that can
Yeah,
be done?
soil samples would be one type of
I
evidence.
mean, if you wanted to go there.
Here's the thing, is that, it's pretty obvious, you see it all the time, this time of the summer, the lawns do not have that color, so I don't have any doubts that it's happening. I'm just struggling a little bit whether it's an automatic issue to fine now, without giving them a chance to speak about it. But I don't have any doubts it's being fertilized, because we just see this all the time. So, I could go either way, you know, add the fine, or have them give an explanation. Mark?
I think it's kind of a heavy assumption that the fertilizers or actual fertilizer is being used. There are fashions of treatment that would exemplify soil health and accentuate the plant growth without chemical fertilizer. And I think as a commission, I think we're reaching in this application to more of an assumption than with fact. And I would advise against it.
I'm not sure we're making any sort of a decision one way or the other. That's why we're giving them the opportunity to come. If they come and say, no, we're not, I'd be very interested in hearing what they're doing that promotes such a nice, weed-free, healthy green lawn. I'd love to know that for my own lawn personally, but, you know, that's an aside, I think.
I think that's the way to go, is to have them come, like, don't wait on the fine for that one yet. Have them come in and discuss, and then we can give them the opportunity. And then decide at the next meeting. That's,
Yeah. And I'd love for you to, you know, listen, give us your opinion on what they present too. I mean, it sounds like you've got more experience than most of us in this.
That would be my preference too.
So, at this point, what I hear is we've got a recommendation on the table to fine for the walkway, the patio, the shed, and the retaining wall. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question with regard to the motion that's on the floor. Is this a one-time fine for them being there, or
Yes.
a per-day fine until removal?
Just
One time.
Just a one-time fine?
until the
Okay.
commission makes a decision about whether to let them keep or remove said
Okay.
structures.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
So we're still looking for a motion on this?
You have a motion and a second.
We have a
We have a
second.
motion.
It's been
Once
seconded.
again.
We considered adding, John's suggestion to add the additional $3 fine. It sounds like we're trending away from that.
Yeah, well, let's do that in a separate,
Well, you don't
do we
have
have a separate motion on that to request that they come back at the next meeting and include that in their
I think,
presentation?
I mean, I can write a request to Lindsay. I know Lindsay or,
You need to write it to Ron Posh.
well, right, sorry, he's the applicant.
Okay,
I will write to Ron Posh saying that he himself or his landscaper, we need to know the current landscaping practices that have been going on at his property.
okay, all right. In that case, I guess we're ready for a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay? None? Passes unanimously.
Is that
Thank
the
you, John.
18th The 18th or the 17th?
The 18th.
18th, great, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Good to see you all again.
Good to see you.
We did move to continue?
Yes. Yeah, we did that first, and then we did the fine.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is order of conditions for Ryan Cox, 9 Atlantic Avenue, map 6B, parcel L145.
Caleb, can we see, so who else is in the go-to meeting? Thank you.
All right.
Any comments at all on this?
I have no comments.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I do have one comment, and it's not really a substantive comment, but it's more of a technical comment and question.
Mm-hmm.
Special condition number 9, which we all agree is important, is really a condition on the approval as opposed to a special condition for the construction of the project. So I was wondering whether or not that should be moved to sort of the front page where you're just discussing, you know, the 3 points with regard to the.
What's the last, what's point number 9? I'm sorry, I don't have it
Point
here.
number 9 is contingent upon the Attorney General's approval for the mitigation?
Is that a general condition?
No, it's a special condition.
Oh. I understand what you're saying.
You know,
Yes.
for the mitigation for the.
Yeah, if you'd
the-
like me to move it up, so it.
Yeah, I'd like you to move it up so that it's really, we're conditioning the total approval on that occurring, and if that doesn't occur, they have to come back to us.
Got it.
And that's my only comment.
Yep, I can do that. I can put that under the, what's approved. in the
Yeah,
page.
just.
Yep,
put it in there.
yep.
Any other comments on this?
I have none.
Motion then?
I'll move that we approve the order of conditions for 9 Atlantic Avenue, map 6B, parcel L145.
Second? Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next item is order of conditions for 6 and 10 Neal Road, map 9, parcels A7-1 and A7-2.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I do have a question about that. With regard to this order of conditions, are we only approving the amended special conditions that were added, or are we?
Correct.
Okay, and that clarifies my ability to vote on it, if I can vote on the
Yes, you
amended
can.
conditions,
Yep.
correct?
It's a-
Okay.
technically a new hearing, yes.
Right, correct. So
Mhm.
that was my only question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question, which is, we discussed and the applicants agreed to lower the groin, and
They
that is
did.
not in the special condition?
Because the new plan reflects it, and the plan of record that I put on the page 1 is the new plan. So the plan of record is 6 inches lower.
Okay.
I mean, I can specifically spell it out, but it's the plan of record is the right one, showing it lower. And I referenced that on page 1. So,
Okay.
okay.
I guess that's good.
No question.
Yeah, no comments, looks
Your
good.
motion then?
I'll move to approve the amended order of conditions for 6 and 10 Neal Road, map 9, parcels A71 and A72.
I'll second.
Lots of seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed? Thank you.
No, one abstention.
Oh, one abstention?
No.
I'm sorry. Okay, one abstention. Five ayes and one abstention. That's.
May I, through the chair, it's Don Monroe.
Yes, Don?
I just wanted to ask if we could get that order as soon as possible.
Yep.
I don't know.
usually
Yeah, okay.
Have it out within a couple days, Don.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you very much.
Under discussion and possible vote, first item we have is removal of an unpermitted fence at 19 Wacquasit Road. Amy, do you want to give us a rundown on this?
Sure. So I do believe that the owner is on the line, but a quick run-through is that at meetings in June, the Conservation Commission issued an enforcement, and also, Mr. Stevens was present at the meeting, said that the fence needed to be removed, which is the white picket fence, by July 1st. That was not done as of July 15th. The posts were still up on the water side of the property. On August 1st, the posts were down on the water, immediately adjacent to the water, but the fencing was still up on the sides of the property, some within the 50-foot buffer, and the rest is within the 100-foot buffer with no permit. That's my,
Anyone like to make any comments? Mr. Stevens, do you want to make any comments on this?
I'm sorry, so the discussion is about the side yard fences?
it was just said in the enforcement order that the fence had to be removed by July 1st. The fence in its entirety. The fence that was, I mean, there was still posts up on the water side as of July 15th, right against the water. But on August 1st, those posts were down, but the fencing was still up on the sides of the property. And as you know, any structure within the 100-foot buffer needs a permit with conservation.
Those were the pre-existing fence, though. That was there prior to. That wasn't the unpermitted fence.
I don't know.
I would have to check back on our photo documentation that we have from previous, projects that you've had here to see if that's the case. I don't know off the top of my head. I thought that as you're facing your house, Mr. Stevens, from the road, there were kind of gates on the sides of the property, and I don't believe those had been there prior, but I'm not sure about on the side property lines as you head towards the water, what was there prior.
Yeah, those were always there. Actually, the previous owner had them. And you can tell because the mesh fence that went in 6 years ago attaches to the ends of them. So essentially, they were there. They're pretty much the right property line and the left property line, not the water side.
Is that something you want to check, Amy, or?
I will happily check on that. I guess, now would be the time to chat, while you're here, would be the time to chat about, the fence that was along the water, why it wasn't, fully removed by July 1.
Well, we sent you an email because we were having a real hard time getting the guy down, and we had hoped not to throw the whole fence away and maybe bring it to another location and use it, but we had to cut the panels out because the posts were cemented. I thought I could free the cement posts up, and I couldn't, so then I had to saw cut all the fence posts off and basically make 4 trips to the Harwich Port dump to get rid of it all because I had to saw cut the posts were junk. And I kind of hoped that $4,000 worth of fence could have been pulled out and saved, but we couldn't do it. So I had to kind of get the right equipment down to rip all the posts out. I took the panels down when I think the 6th or the 7th, and I think I saw Mr. Ketchum drive by 3 or 4 times the day I was taking the posts down, but I had to sawzall them all and put them in the back of my truck and take them to the dump. So.
It's the purview of
We had a hard time, quite honestly. I was trying to get the fence contractor to take them out so I could use them up at another job, but he couldn't get down, so then it was just kind of me on 2 weekends taking care of it.
Well, it's up to you if you'd like me to go through about the side, if you want to have the whole discussion, and when we talk about the side fences, I thought they were new, but I can also...
They did match the
But I can also, verify that. So that's up to the commission.
John, did you see something?
Well, I did not drive by 19 Wequassett. I don't think I ever did. I might have done it once, but not 4 times. I'm not sure I even did it once, so I'm not sure what Mr. Stevens is talking about. I'm also looking at satellite images, historical satellite images, and like from April 2017, I don't see any white fence there, and it's April, so there isn't much foliage. I think it would be good for Amy to look very closely at that stuff, because
Sure.
I'm not sure what the real history is here.
If I could, Amy, I have some historical photos actually before we filed the first permit of the fence that the previous owners have. I'll supply them to you just for your purview.
That would be great. We would appreciate that, just so I mean, believe me, we don't want to argue about things. We just want to get a clear picture of what was there before versus what's there now on the property. I think that's what we're wanting, so, okay?
So are you available on the 18th, Mr. Stevens?
Yes, I am.
All right, so,
I think maybe we should continue this discussion until then,
yes. I do
so we
too.
can get those facts. If you could get me a copy, a scanned copy of those photos in the next week or so, that would be greatly appreciated. And
Okay.
as well, whatever I may find in previous files and pictures that I have, I'll gladly share them with you as well. Nothing, okay?
Okay, good.
Fair enough.
All right, you guys don't need to vote on that to the 18th, as it's just discussion item, so I'll just put it in.
All right, great. Thank you then.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to, next one is an update on 422 Main Street.
Play this game for a while.
Not really, because I don't think there's, we can ask if there's any gonna be here for this, but, I'm not anticipating anybody is here for either 422 Main or 141 Riverside. I just wanted to give you an update, because the commission at the last meeting mentioned wanting an update on where we were at with those. They're kind of older violations that just haven't gone away. So 422 Main was an area that, down by Flax Pond, that had been disturbed without a permit. And we did approve a replanting plan in August of last year. Since that time, the owner had also wanted to put together a plan of what they proposed to do there, kind of a comprehensive plan. And I believe the representative project did that, but has not been given the okay from the owner to proceed with coming back to us for that. So I have reached out to the owner, asking to do an on-site, and I have not heard from them yet, so I'll try to phone call, and schedule that. 141 Riverside, is a bit trickier. It seems like the consultants are also having a hard time getting a hold of this individual, where work had been done on the bank by the Herring River. Basically, the property changed hands. They had an excavator come in and scrape the back area of the lot, saying that it had kind of been a historic dumping ground for previous owners, but they also did some cutting of the vegetation on the bank, and they did fix the dock, which they had the permit for a dock, but again, we should have known that they were gonna be fixing it. So I have sent this week a certified letter to that person, asking them to appear at the 8/18 meeting, which is turning out to be a big meeting. We got a couple new filings in too, so those are that's my update on those two. So more to come on that. Just wanted to let you know we are starting to follow through on that, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Quick question on 141 Riverside. We're not in jeopardy of losing the ability to fine for that episode?
We already did fine for that episode, so now it's just like, we just want to get it restored.
Thank you for remembering all these times. There's so many.
I had to go check for the last one. I don't. Contrary to people in the audience thinking, we actually don't like to fine and don't do it very often.
All right, next item on the agenda is 47 North Road, and we have a couple of emails from Amy on this, showing photographs of the property before and after, and some of the issues that we want to talk about tonight.
Do you want me to give a quick overview? And I don't know if the owner is present. They were notified a couple of times. I spoke with them about the meeting, and they were aware of it. I don't think I see the owner on, go-to meeting, but, they were notified, multiple times. So this 47 North Road, actually, I mean, it's connected to 52 North Road, which is right across the street, but we'll take them one at a time. 47 North Road's a little cottage on the water side, right, pretty much right in the Herring River. They were allowed to do a couple things by the Conservation Commission. They were allowed to remove their cesspool that's in the very front of the property and replace it with a tight tank. And they were allowed to install a vinyl bulkhead behind their existing bulkhead because it was being undermined and failing. So in the permits, it was very clear that any area that was disturbed was to be reseeded with just a Cape Cod mix. And then if the two trees, which were a cedar and a pitch pine, had to be removed, they were to be replanted with trees or shrubs on our guidance. Previously, when we visited the site, we noticed that there was an outdoor shower, and that where they were keeping their utilities had started to be fenced in. We issued an enforcement to have those removed. They have not been removed. And actually, I mean, as of a week or two ago, it stayed kind of in that way for a while. But now recently, even more work has become done. The enclosure around the utilities in the front of the house has become more substantial and finished. There's new posts on the deck near where the shower head is. Upon looking at previous maps and photos, the deck itself is larger than what was previously there before the bulkhead went in. There was always a deck about over half the backyard, but not, it's like 2/3 now. And then as well as where the bulkhead is, now the bulkhead has almost a little deck around some of that, and it actually, whereas the bulkhead before, there were pilings on the outside of the bulkhead, now there's a deck that actually goes over the top of the pilings and a little bit more seaward into the water, which this isn't just an issue with conservation, it technically is a slight extension into navigable waters. Should have gone through other, state and other channels as well. So, I guess at this time, Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate to see if there is anybody on go-to meeting who wants to respond to some of the points that I have made? I know we have a few people, it looks like, in the audience who are neighbors, which maybe we can ask them to hold off till after the commission discusses, but is Mr. Smith, is Mr. Smith available? Okay, I don't think so. And again, I've spoke with Mr. Smith, and he has been sent various correspondence. I mean, at this time, I think the commission has made it extremely clear what can and can't be done there, that anything needs to go in front of conservation, and that this is very much in excess of his permit. And I have recommendations for fines for each of the activities, as well as a request that you issue an enforcement order to give him a month to put the property back to the way it was supposed to be, or else further fines be levied until they are. Do you want to treat these do you want to talk about 47 first and then go to 52?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my report on 47.
All right. Any questions, comments on this? I assume most of us got out there today to look at it. It's pretty surprising the amount of work that's been done on this property, especially in contravention to the directions of the approvals that we've given so far. The character of the property has just changed completely from my perspective. Things like the trees that you mentioned there were 2 trees that we told him he could
By the
remove.
cesspool, yeah.
They had to be replanted, is that right?
They had to be replanted, or with either trees or shrubs. I mean, there are plantings out there right now, but there's some ornamental, so they have not planted native.
Do you have any idea, Amy, how many violations have taken place on this property, if you had to quantify it, since our last discussion and since, given the approvals that we've given to him?
Well, I mean, just counting up the ones that I mentioned now, I count 7.
So,
Not counting previous ones, which were, like I said, he was previously issued an enforcement to remove the shower and the enclosure around the utilities.
we didn't fine for that, though?
We did.
Oh, we did, okay. So there's 7 additional violations.
It's still it was in violation for those 2 things, and there's 5 other violations
So
here,
5 that we haven't addressed, essentially.
right?
And I think they're significantly more substantial than the first 2 that we talked about.
Yep.
Um,
And again, it has been made abundantly clear every time I talk to Mr. Smith that anything that gets done on that property has to come in front of conservation.
It doesn't look like he's,
Right, but I'm just saying, it's not for lack of knowing.
yeah. All right. Do you have any recommendation as far as how long these violations have existed?
It's a mix because, the deck started to be in violation after the bulkhead went in. Which I don't know exactly, off the top of my head, I don't know when that was. It was this year, or past year. The enclosure area, that's been an ongoing thing because it has actually changed over time, but it's been
That
for a
we
little
addressed
while.
Previously, correct?
Well, it was fine, but it has become more of a substantial enclosure now, very much so. So I don't have an exact time frame for you, Mr. Chairman, and we did not, in the enforcement, give Mr. Smith, I think we were lenient with him. We said they had to be removed. We did not give him a deadline for removal. I think now is our chance to do that, and I think my recommendation is for you to fine $300 per each of the 7 instances for a total violation fine of an initial $2,100 for the 7 items that I mentioned. Give Mr. Smith a month or till, I actually came up with a date, September 6th, because that's a Monday. Should the deck not be back in the footprint it was pre-construction, if the walls around the utilities area aren't removed, the shell removed and just native plant, or native grass put down, that bulkhead is gonna be an interesting one to fix, but that was not done correctly. But I recommend, if come September 6th, if that is not put back to what we have documented as pre-existing conditions prior to all this work, that daily fines be levied for each of those activities still in violation. He does have the ability to contest the fines, but I think at this point, we have to go this route.
How about the replanting of the trees? Was there a deadline for that to be done?
Within the life of the permit, so no, but I would, that permit that was the septic permit, it's probably about 2 years old now, so it's about a year to do it. And I'll happily suggest what he should replant.
Yeah, and we'll put that, I assume, in the order, too.
Yeah. So in addition to all those little things, I mean, and I counted, I just forgot to mention it for the record, there's a bunch of these little decks or landings kind of around the house. So that's additional structure. I guess we should also bring to light that he's kind of capped per the Rivers Act about how much square footage of hardscape he's supposed to have on that property. And he's exceeded that. So that's another issue, as well as site coverage, which is not our board, but would be going for the Zoning Board of Appeals. He has increased site coverage without permit.
Okay. So it sounds like for tonight, the issue before us is whether or not to impose current fines of $2,100 for the 7 violations that continue to exist and accumulate on this property, and set a deadline of September 6th for him to remediate these issues?
Yep, and the only reason, so just for the public's edification, I say removal is because I don't think the commission, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you would have approved of these changes. This is all work in the resource or in the 0 to 50. However, it is his right to file an after-the-fact notice of intent for this work, but that would be separate from the enforcement order and fine. It would be two separate processes.
And regardless, if we set a deadline, he would still have to remove these structures prior to filing.
Or come in front
By
of
the
you at the
6th.
next meeting and plead his case to hold off. He could ask for an extension, but the clock would start.
All right. John?
Yeah, I have a question for Amy. Amy, you said something about there being a problem with the bulkhead, and that needed to be fixed. And what, were you referring to the deck extending over the bulkhead, or is there some basic problem with the bulkhead itself?
Oh, sorry, I was referring to what was the cap on the bulkhead, if you will. That's what they have called it. But the decking over the bulkhead,
Cap that is a deck, in fact.
the cap that is a deck.
Okay, all right.
It actually, I mean, before, the pilings were the outermost part of that structure, and now the deck goes over that. It's like a walkway.
But it was like 2 by 8.
It's a
or something
walkway,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, 2 by 10 something.
And also on top of that, I mean, so I've spoke with him maybe a couple of weeks ago. I asked him what meeting he wanted, and I said we couldn't do the end of July meeting but to be at the August 4th, and he agreed. And I told him then not to do any further work. Since that time, the enclosure has gotten more substantial, and there's been new posts put in on the deck.
So, I have another question. I don't think it's in our purview, but is there something in the building code that would apply to having to have fencing along the outer perimeter of any
I
deck?
think that's what it looks like they're starting to try to do.
Or is that a building code thing that they're trying to comply with?
They don't have a building permit for that, for anything out there other than siding, and we checked. They don't have a building permit other than re-siding and re-shingling. They do not have a building permit for the deck.
So is that another problem?
Yep. Which we have brought it, again, we have brought it to the building department's attention today.
So the building department was not aware of this until today?
I can't say that.
Any other questions?
Well, I have a question. So I'm just trying to identify the 7, are these the 7 lines that you're indicating, these bullets on your?
Pretty much. The shell, because it's the shell driveway, the brick walkway with the hardener,
Right.
the outdoor shower, the enclosure, the deck expansion, the fact that the structure now encroaches farther over into the river, and all those little decks that are around the house. That's 7.
Okay, no, and that's what your bullets are.
Yeah.
The one thing that I didn't see that you just had was the enclosure, but you had a thing here called all work in the 0 to 50, so that would have been.
Yeah, it would have been work that was permitted under 32, where we said it
So
was,
that-
yeah.
that-
That's 7 things,
All
so
the 0 to 50 would like include the driveway and stuff like that.
everything is in the 0 to 50 on this property.
Property, the entire lot.
It has changed a lot since I last spoke with him a couple weeks ago, after we said no. You may have comments, I don't know if you want to wait and do 52 at the same time, or I think you do have some comments from the audience of people who are neighbors who have been involved in this.
Yeah, that's fine. Is anyone on the phone that would like to talk about this? Then welcome your comments.
No, I guess not.
Star 6, pound 6?
Yeah, so now would be the time for public comment on 47 North Road, if anybody has it. If you are on a phone, it's star 6.
Amy, I just have a question.
We can't, Mr. Dudek, we can barely hear you. Mr. Dudek, we can't hear you.
How about now? How about now?
That's good.
I only have a question really about the cesspool.
We can't, it's
I
all
mean, really,
muffled.
my concern about this, been the cesspool for a long time. Is the cesspool gone?
Question was cesspool gone?
The cesspool is gone to my knowledge, yes.
The reason I asked the question is there's been, and again, there's this chatter, but I would just someone to confirm whether that's been done and it has been confirmed that everyone's copacetic. Because it's been-
Mr. Dudek, it's very, very muffled. We're having a very hard time hearing you. What I can do, I think you're asking for me to verify that the cesspool is gone, which we can do with the Board of Health. He was allowed to put a tight tank in.
Yeah, I remember being
Mr. Smith has requested to be able to tie that system into the one across the street, but he has not yet received permit from the Board of Health to do that.
okay.
But I can double check that the cesspool has been in fact removed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So can we get a, we might as well make a motion on.
You want to do the, yes, to do the two
I think-
properties separately.
Yes, we will. So can we have a motion? I think a proposal is that we impose a fine at this point of $2,100 for the 7 violations for a $300 per violation fine, with the proviso that it be, all of these issues be removed by September 6th.
So moved.
And we have a second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask Amy a question. Am I able to vote on this?
You can, yep.
Okay, then aye.
Good,
I
okay,
approve.
unanimous then.
Yeah, because even though it was stuff that we approved under previous hearing, this is an enforcement on stuff that just hasn't been okay to do, so,
And I'm in favor of the enforcement.
yeah. Would you like me to go through 52 North
Yes,
Road,
please.
Mr. Chairman? So this is across the street, this is the same property owner. So the commission did permit a new septic system there, which they have installed. That's kind of in the gravel parking area that was never approved to be a gravel parking area that's there. So you also approved 2 small additions for the house, a 3x12 on the back of the house, which looks like it has been started and does measure 3x12. And you did permit a 4x12 one in the front of the house. What has been started in the front of the house is actually 22x6. So there's the 2 issues here. One, the area that is a little like a gravel parking area. That's pretty much at the 100-foot wetland buffer, but definitely within the 200-foot riverfront area. And the other one is the addition in the front of the house that is much bigger, or what's been started, essentially, that's much bigger than what you permitted. So for this property, because it's actively being worked on, I recommend an immediate stop work for this property. I would recommend a fine for the 2 activities I just stated. And I would recommend that the gravel area be returned to native grass and the front addition to be returned to the 4-foot by 12-foot by September 6th. This one, you could say, this one's not in the 0 to 50-foot buffer. With proper filing in they may be able, and mitigation, this is something you may want, they may entertain in the future. But I think just to give a timeline for, getting things rolling, I still think that a timeline of September 6th is a good idea for this one, to put a sense of urgency to it.
All right,
Okay?
all right, thank you. Any comments, discussions?
And actually, that's just so you know, that 22x6, it's not an addition yet. It really looks like a deck on the front of the house so far, which they wouldn't necessarily need a building permit if it's a deck, but his building permit calls for a 4x12 as well, not a 22x6.
Now, when we put a stop work order on the property, Amy, does that mean that he cannot do any additional work until these items are corrected?
The only thing he can do is to fix these things. That's it.
And once they're
If he
fixed,
does
then-
stuff interiorly, that's not us, but he cannot do any, he cannot, and that's where we photographed it, cannot continue to work on these items that are in violation,
Or any additional.
or any additional ones that haven't been done.
Right, okay,
He has to fix this first.
okay, good. So, John?
I'm just a little concerned that we issue a stop work order and he continues to work and he calls the building department and things happen outside of what we're doing because we've seen that in the past. Is there a way to coordinate with the building department to make
We
sure that they
talked to them about this
understand
today
the-
too.
I'm sorry?
We've talked to them about this today too, and I'm gonna be copying them on everything that we have, that we issue.
All right.
Amy, just one question. On both of these things that we just voted on, we said September 6th. That is Labor Day by any. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Oh, shoot.
I don't know.
September 7th.
Yeah, I move we revise the previous motion to reflect September 7th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Motion on the current issue on
52.
North Road.
Well, also, do we have, what about the previous one on 47?
I think that was the amendment there for 47,
Yes, so
for
that's-
September 7th, so this would be September 7th too. Thank you for catching that.
So I would move that we approve fines for 52 North Road for the addition, for the deck in the front and the gravel parking space on the side of, and fines be imposed of $600, and that these two areas be returned to what was permitted by September 7th, 2021.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
So
Did you
second, did you second?
No, I said so moved.
Oh.
Oh, Ernie made the motion.
Oh, you may have, okay, I'll second it, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Last items on the agenda are minutes. We have-
No, C Street.
C Street, I'm sorry, excuse me.
No problem.
Discussion of possible town work at the end of C Street.
So I brought some of you out there today. At the end of C Street, the end of the road is, basically extends, I don't know if the road itself on paper extends to the water or not, but you get to the end of C Street, you get to the town property that leads out to the beach. Abutters have been requesting of the DPW to take what has become dune and beach and augment and change that back to essentially end of public roadway. So where the dunes have migrated on either sides, to remove that, clear to either side, 3 to 4 feet on either side, by probably about 30 feet long, in order to widen that area, and also to remove sand, because there's been a dune. The coastal beach has blown in, and there's a bit of a elevation change. So the neighbors have asked the DPW to, knock that down, and the DPW does know better and called me and said, Amy, can we do this? And I said no. But the abutters do keep asking, and have, so I said, well, maybe it's time for the Conservation Commission to talk about it. Would this, what they're proposing to do, ever be entertained if the town were to file a notice of intent? I've essentially just allowed them to maintain the catch basins and, keep the vegetation from, completely growing over. But, I mean, technically, it's a question in front of you. We did see a couple of the abutters did come out today when we were on site, and there was a suggestion, or people said, well, it's hard for people to kind of get up this, it's a bit of an incline, and mentioned, other areas where the town has a rollout boardwalk or a Moby mat to, still keep the incline, but have it be more stable footing for people. I can't recommend changing, removing the vegetation and changing the topography that's out there, but that's me, and that's my read of the Wetlands Protection Act, is that we shouldn't even file for it, because I don't think it's something that's approvable. But I would potentially be amenable to a seasonal removable mat, Moby mat, or boardwalk to ease the traverse up. It's not a vegetated area that they're looking to get up and over. So maybe we can make that concession, but it's up to you.
And if they did go that route, would they be, who would be responsible for maintaining it? The town?
DPW, which we do the other ones like Bank Street Beach, and I would not suggest it be that long, like the one at Bank Street Beach. I would suggest it be enough just to get to that top, so where it's flat.
For those of you that weren't there when the neighbor came out and was talking about it, he said the big issue is people with their little dollies that they have to lug over to the beach, you know, and it's hard to get up the sand dune and back down the other side. When we suggested the walkway, he said, well, that'd be fine. He seemed like it was pretty much fait accompli if we were to allow him to go that route. And I think, Stan, you mentioned too, that if we did remove that dune, then storm coming in that way, that would just inundate that neighborhood.
It'd be bad. Yeah, if you took down, they want to take a couple feet off to make that flat potentially, it would be very damaging in the event of a coastal storm there.
I guess my comment is, why is that road even, I mean, there's no parking there or anything. If
It is considered a beach, according to, I looked this up afterwards. It is considered one of the town of Harwich's beaches, even though it's for the neighbor. It is C Street Beach.
Right. But I'm just saying, since the dune has moved over the road, in effect,
Yeah.
it would have been better off if the town had never put in that road to begin with and just have
Yeah.
from the edge, from where the road ended, because, I mean,
What would really be good is more vegetation there to stop the sand before it blows in.
Trying to widen the road, widen that pathway, because he was trying to claim there's road underneath it and to remove that vegetation, which, too bad, the dune is moved.
Well, the road itself, that doesn't access anything at that
Right,
point.
that's
It's
what
not
I'm
like a
saying. There's no
hindrance to a
parking, there's
house.
no access.
It says no parking down there.
Is that one of the destination beaches for people that park downtown in Harwichport?
Yes.
It is.
But that is not like that, nobody from, who uses it in that way has contacted us about this. It's the
Oh, no, I'm not
abutter.
suggesting they would, because
Yeah.
obviously they should be
Yes,
doing
this
it
is a
to
very
begin with.
easy beach to walk to if you are in the Harwichport.
Yeah.
So, but
It's a neighborhood beach is what it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
is the public beach just the width of that old road between the
Yes,
two?
so what's the easiest way to see it is basically the guy on the left has a fence and that's right on the property line, and the guy on the right has a rock wall, and that's, so I think it's 40 feet.
So strictly speaking, there's a strip of beach 40 feet wide that the whole neighborhood is using. But they're probably going down and going below high tide mark.
And they're probably, yeah, I don't know if the people on either side, the property lines are a little strange there. Some people actually own to the water and others don't. The town actually owns in front of some of the houses down there. Not everyone. But yes, and so in essence, 40 feet wide, that's what you have.
It's like the beach at the end of Neal Road, too.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yep.
Yeah. I've
So-
seen a couple others like that too. The signs are right there saying
Private beach.
private beach on either side of it, yeah.
But I'm just wondering about the overall geography of the beach there. We've of course discussed at length the dune a couple doors down.
Yes.
On C Street extension. And the statement was made repeatedly, I think, that in fact, the beach has been accreting out front. But I'm a little unclear about whether people are also maintaining that the dune closer to C Street extension has been building up. And is that what's happening just here? Is the beach accreting out and extending further seaward?
Yep.
As well as the dune?
Going more landward.
Landward is building
Yes.
up there?
It's both, I would say. You're getting a small amount of accretion there because of the Witchmere jetty, believe it or not, all the way down there. You're still getting accretion because of that huge jetty.
Yeah, okay.
And then because it's not vegetated, it's acting like a funnel. There's the sand, when the wind blows, that's where the sand goes, because there's houses on either side. On either side, there's vegetation. If they had more vegetation, if they had a narrower path, and I'm not suggesting we make them do that, that hasn't historically been there for a very long time. But if they did have more vegetation, they wouldn't have that big hump of sand closest to the road. It wouldn't have blown in like that. It would have dropped, and the whole beach itself, closer to the water, would have actually been a little higher, rather than it blowing up towards the road, so.
So what do we have before us tonight?
Well, it sounds like you could, you could say, okay, file a notice of intent to do everything that they wanna do down there, and direct the town to do that if the DPW saw fit. You could, allow potentially administratively me to allow a seasonal walkway, to the most minimal extent to get people up to the stable spot. Or you could just say no to that and say, just keep doing kind of what we're doing, which is maintaining the drain and just keeping the vegetation from, brushing against people walking by.
I favor the last.
Leave it natural?
Let me ask you one other question, because we do have a number of those little beaches like that.
Yeah.
And on those other ones, are they in the same position where there's a dune there and people have to walk up to it?
A little bit, yeah.
So I'm
This
not
one
in
is a little
favor of-
wider.
because now we'll end up having to do this on every one of them then.
It really would be a variance, right?
For work in a resource.
Yeah, so to me, it's a.
So,
new structure.
it could be a notice of intent if the town wanted to do it.
But process-wise, I don't get how just the neighbors come to us with a notice of intent. It seems to me that they should be asking DPW, which they are doing, to do this work, and then it's DPW coming to us.
Or actually, really selectmen, it's, if the selectmen would want that work done on town land to begin with.
Amy, I think he does have a point.
Yeah.
That the only one that would have standing to come before us with a notice of intent would be the town DPW.
Correct, and I had mentioned that to DPW.
And there's expenditures involved, so it's
Yeah.
like the local neighbors can't just decide that DPW is gonna spend money,
Right,
right?
right.
I mean,
No,
Of
but they can
course.
request
Amy,
it.
my.
They
Yeah,
can
well, need to go to
request
the
it,
DPW
exactly.
to request, and the
Right.
DPW comes here, and
Exactly.
so,
Amy, my suggestion would be that you just have a conversation with DPW about what we have discussed tonight and the feeling of this board tonight.
Mhm.
And then let DPW is the one that has to make the decision how they want to proceed.
Well, I think you can tell DPW that we're not in favor of it.
Right. But DPW has to make the decision whether
Right.
they want to,
But
You
at
know,
least
even
let them
bring
know
anything
rather
in
than going
front
through
of
the
us.
filing is what I'm saying.
right.
Yeah, that's fine. I just said we would have an open discussion about it.
Yeah.
And I would agree with Brad, especially given that is adding to the issue of parking in Harwich Port. If we improve and make it more accessible, it's just gonna become even more so, or potentially. So I think that's probably the right, from my perspective,
Yeah.
I think that's the right
Trying to
position.
think, I think the only ones where we actually have boardwalks are at parking lots where we have parking, or at beaches where we have
Right,
parking,
yeah.
I don't think we have any boardwalks at the ends of, beaches at the ends of roads that don't have parking. I think
Yeah.
all the ones that we have boardwalks on there's public parking right there.
and I personally think that the abutters would not be happy about making it easier for a lot of people to come down to that beach, because they would end up using, if there are crowds, if they're more than just a trickle of neighbors going down there, they'd be using the abutters' property. And I imagine that wouldn't be very popular with the abutters.
The other comment, what you just talking about don't have dunes that they're traversing either. They're relatively.
It's all coastal
flat.
beach, yeah, it's been maintained like that forever, so it's, this is starting to
It's more
naturalize.
because they're larger public beaches where people are bringing more things.
Well, we actually have a permit to maintain those beaches, you know, beach raking permits.
But you also have the things like the handicap wheelchairs there and everything else that
Right,
would benefit from having those temporary paths
Right.
there at those public, you know, with the, ones
Mhm.
with the parking lots, which are
Mhm.
with staffed, basically.
Right.
And guarded.
I'll go with whatever we want me to go with, so.
Doesn't sound like we need to have a vote on this. It
No,
sounds
I can
like-
relay what we talked about with
Yeah.
the DPW.
I mean, does anyone have any other position on this that we want Amy to present to DPW?
I agree with you guys.
I'm 100% with Brad.
The only other consideration, where DPW does maintain that basin down there, if the sidelines of the road were opened back up, that would contribute to aiding the drainage and the water dissipation, because the water does collect very heavily down there. I guess I would defer to their opinion on that, but
They've also said I mean, it's not just that, it's kind of the vegetation and the sand has come in. The problem is it's so close to groundwater, it's not dissipating anyway,
well, that's an issue
regardless
as
of how
well.
open it is.
And also, I mean, in many cases, you know, the rugosa is not looked at favorably, and that's what that is on both sides of the road.
Plus bittersweet. There's plenty of bittersweet on one side.
A little bit of that too, yeah. But actually, I mean, that could help in terms of sucking up some of the water, who knows?
To a degree, I'm sure it does, but they can only drink so much.
Yes, I wasn't saying it was a lot.
So you all set, Amy, with this?
Yeah, I'm all set. What was I gonna say? I have not heard back from council about those minutes, those executive session minutes.
Oh, it looked like they were cut back considerably from what we looked at last time.
Oh,
But
maybe,
if you don't have her feedback, let's not
No.
even talk about it.
Well,
Okay.
I have a comment, though, that,
okay,
just a clarification thing, I think, I need to find it, though.
unless you sent it to Melissa and I didn't see it, but I didn't see a,
There was, I think it's the last sentence in the second paragraph, but hang on now.
I don't have it with me, I need to print these out when I come to meetings.
Oh,
you want
yeah,
my
I do have to be careful.
You want my
yes,
copy?
but-
Sure. Or just make the note. Thank you.
I'm just reminding.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'd just like you, Amy, to look at the last sentence in the second paragraph after all the bold-faced stuff. And it's like it's an incomplete sentence or something.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, Ernie underlined it. Yeah, I may take a minute to reword that, but I know what you mean.
Yeah,
It is an incomplete sentence.
So we just wait to get another copy?
Yeah,
of
that's
that?
fine.
Okay. So we can move on to the December 2nd, 2020 minutes?
Do you have that one?
You have one set. Melissa's been scrambling as best as she can.
Yeah, I got that one.
Yeah, so December 2nd's probably not ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I've
We're,
got-
Melissa's trying to is doing a great job and trying to get some stuff done, but we're just so slammed. We do have a opening for an on-call secretary for all boards and committees, so if you know anybody who's looking to make a little bit of extra money on their own time, have them reach out to administration or me, somebody.
I've gone through July 21st. I have no comments.
I have no comment.
The only comment I had was on the second page, the second paragraph, first sentence, second line, you have in lieu fees that, I think you want to put hyphens between those.
Can you circle that and I'll take that? I'll print them out next time. I'm still getting used to doing things in person and what I need to bring and, yes. Everything but the kitchen sink and the minutes is what I brought. Anything else other than that change? All right.
So,
Is John Schmeigel's name spelled correctly with an I in there?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't think it had the I, but.
Yeah, he doesn't
I figured-
pronounce
no,
it with
heard
the I.
With the sewer thing, so I didn't know. Okay.
Yep.
so can we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes for July 21, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Couple quick updates for you, and then I'll see if you guys have anything for me or the rest of each other. So 8/18 is looking to be a little busy. We also, in addition to what we put tonight, we have a few new hearings. I also have it on the docket for Leo Kukunis to come in and give us an update on the Main Street blogs.
For next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
As we, in another few days, I'll touch base with Leo and see if he's still on track with coming for the 18th, or if he wants to come in September.
Yeah, would we prefer to have him come at the meeting after that?
What, I mean, I know that the selectmen, and we're anxious to have that discussion, so I'll see what's best for him.
All right, and if you sort of prep him that, we're gonna have a heavy agenda, and if you
Yes, yep.
just really not rush, but condense his comments.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask, I think 2 weeks is gonna, if we want it, but I also don't know what September is gonna bring. We tend to, it's been condensed this year. We haven't had as big of I call it a lull, but it's more of a breather, because it's never not busy, but we've had a slight decrease in filings, as you've noticed. It will pick up again, usually substantially come the September. So.
I don't want Leo to shortchange his presentation either.
I understand, so I just don't know right now if September 1st is gonna look better or worse than August 18th, so.
Yeah.
We sent you an email, and I think I mentioned at the last meeting, the conference at the Wacquasit is taking place, the One Cape Conference. It is the 23rd and 24th of August, I think. It's a Monday, Tuesday. The only thing, and it's about environment and housing, so it's pretty broad. It is officially open for registration, but they haven't given us kind of a set agenda, like is one day gonna be more environment and one day gonna be more housing. We do have the funding if you want to go. Even if you're more interested in housing, it's good information to have. So if you want to go to either or both of those days, please let us know ASAP so we can sign you up and pay for you. If you could let us know by the end of the week, it would be really helpful.
I'm very interested, but I gotta see an agenda.
Yeah.
I don't wanna waste the time.
I hear you. I am off that Monday, but I've penciled in that I'm going on that Tuesday. Melissa's gonna go Monday.
Have you been to them before?
Yes.
And
I find them very good. The speakers they bring in are very good speakers. The issues are pertinent. What's nice about all the other conferences that we go to for environmental things, it's either statewide or region-wide. This is specific to the Cape, the issues of the Cape, to the specific locations and issues that we're having. So it is really good. And it's also, in addition to the workshops that you do, it's a great chance to talk to your counterparts in other communities and see what they're doing. So I get as much value out of that, to talk about those other issues and see how other people might handle things. Because there's time, during lunches and before and after to do all that, so. And it's at the Wacquasit, so it's not a bad spot. So please let Melissa and I know in the next couple of days if you would like to go. And like I said, we can't pay right up front because we have to get billed. So tell me if you want to go. We'll send in hold your spot, if you will. And then we can kind of see what the agenda might be.
Okay. I'd like to go to the environmental day, but right now they're
We
not
don't know.
declaring what
I
it
know.
is. And so I can't go to both days.
Can you
It's
sign up for
a lot.
one or both?
Yes,
I think you can,
Okay.
but I hate to sign up for 2 days and not use,
right.
so I'm kind of waiting on the agenda, but I guess if you can put me down for a placeholder for the one day, that'd be great.
I am guessing environment's going to be day one. That is my environment. In the past, I've been a few years, they always do environment and something. Environment's always been the first day. So based on past track record, I'm guessing it's gonna be the Monday. But I don't know for certain. They could.
And that's what day?
August 23rd and 24th? Yeah, August 23rd and 24th. Brad had brought up in an email the desire to chat more about the management activities at the Bell's Neck Bogs in terms, fall's coming. I would really like to start tackling some invasive management out there this fall. But we don't have that as an official discussion topic for tonight, so, I mean,
Can we fit it in next meeting?
I'll do our best. I'll put it on. If we get to it, we get to it.
If we could pick a date to do some physical work and then discuss how we're gonna get back to developing the management plan update.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely set a workday for, it's sometime in September, to go do a workday out there for invasive removal from the bogs.
That'd be great if we can talk about it next discussion. And the other issue I asked about was the bylaw changes.
Yes.
It seems like there's some procedural things going on that might make it hard to get it onto the town meeting in September. But with all the dialogue going around getting it approved last time, there was a fair amount of assurance that it would get a shot next time.
Yes.
And even if it can't, I think we should still discuss it at the next discussion period, and then have a strategy for bringing it to the selectmen's attention, that we would like to move forward, not lose momentum. And, so we don't have to spend too much time on it.
So my recommendation on that, so just, it's not a definite that we're gonna have a fall special town meeting yet. The Board of Selectmen wants to wait to make that decision until they're fully constituted, which is gonna be sometime in mid to late September when the election is for the fifth member of the board. They're shooting right now to have a town meeting in mid-October, so that's a very small window of time. The last time the Board of Selectmen weren't supportive of putting it on town meeting because we didn't go to present to them. And it didn't have in their mind the proper public vetting. So because if we do have a special town meeting and we can get on it, there's a very limited time between election and town meeting potentially to get in front of the selectmen. So should we be proactive about it and ask to get on just for discussion? If we have to redo it in May or April, so be it. But should I get on there to go to one of their beginning of September meetings to have a public meeting with them on our proposed bylaw changes?
I think so. I was on the meeting, with the Board of Selectmen when this was discussed. I think Amy was too. There was a 2-2 vote not to bring it forward, and 2 members were very supportive of us putting this on the last town meeting, and 2 were not. But there was some assurances that it would get a chance soon, but please bring it before us, describe what you're doing, PowerPoint presentation. So I think we should discuss it next meeting and maybe come up with a strategy for making that request.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with making a presentation to the Board of Selectmen sometime in September in hopes that we do have a town meeting, and if we don't, then we have another, one in front of them in March or April to get even, and that just says, okay, we're gonna have more public information on it, so.
It came this close to getting on, and it would have been voted through. I mean, the public was supportive of all this. So it's really a shame, and I just hate to have too much time go by.
No, thank you for bringing that back up.
Yep.
That's what I have. Does anybody else have anything you wanna chat about? Put on for upcoming agenda?
Don't think so.
Okay.
Sounds like we have a busy meeting next 2 weeks from now, so.
Spoiled 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Well, let's not take, let's not just, sit around here and wait. We can go.
Okay.
We have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I do have, so the 2 orders you voted on, if you could, there's only